And young people are the solutions for tomorrow. Young people are the solutions for all the worries. And young people, if you stay with them, you will be full of energetic. But the advice I give to the young people is that also the advice I give to myself, that nothing is easy. Nothing is free. If you want to be successful, you have to pay the price. Alibaba, 18 years to today's size. Yeah, we are lucky, but we work much harder than most of the people. We never sleep well and sound in the evening. I traveled last year 867 hours a year in the plane. I'm working hard, my team working very hard. 18 years, we work like a normal company, 70 years, day and night. Nothing is free. Nothing is easy. Easy means you have to think different. You have to do different. Early days in my company, when some ideas come to my desk, Jack, this is a great idea, and I look at everybody. Everybody say it is a good idea, I normally throw into the rubbish. Because everybody say it is good, then all the other people think of. If everybody say this is going to be very tough, I'm very interested in that tough question. And I pick up and say, how can we do it in a different way? This is to be unique, to be different. Today is very tough. Tomorrow is more tougher. The day after tomorrow is beautiful, but most people die tomorrow evening. You have to work very hard. Every tough days, every tough situations, problems you meet, that is the training of yourself. When you graduate your school, graduate from this school, you just start your career of learning. When you got a PhD diploma or bachelor diploma, this is just a certificate your parents paid the tuition for 4 years. Your real challenge is when you leave the college, the real life starts. The real exam starts. The real test starts. That's life.
I want to talk about my experience of moving out and living on my own. Moving out to live on your own is not very common in Hong Kong. Many people still choose to live with their parents even though they have a decent job and they're already at their 30s. Many of them would stay with their parents until they get married. There are several reasons behind. Firstly, Hong Kong's rent is expensive. Many people would rather save up more money to purchase an apartment instead of renting one. Secondly, the Chinese traditional value of family is that the parents are the ones who brought you up. When you become an adult, you should also take good care of your parents and you should spend more time to be with them. And of course, there are people who are still dependent on their parents for food, clothing, household chores, etc. When I tell people about the idea of moving out, many people's reaction is like, what do your parents say? Because they assume the parents would not like their children to leave them. Well, I don't know if my parents like it, but I can tell you my parents support and respect my decision. They think it is good for me to try and live on my own, and then I would know it is the best to stay with my family. The most important reason for independent living is to save the traveling time to work. It used to take me 1 hour 15 minutes to travel to work from my previous living place. From my new apartment, it just takes me 30 minutes, so I saved 45 minutes traveling time. I don't have to get up so early, and I save 2/3 of my traveling cost. It does not only save my time to travel for work, but also for most of the places in Hong Kong. In addition, I gain my personal space and freedom by independent living. I make my own decision all the time. I do not have to say whether I will go home for dinner. I can invite my friends to come up and stay late. Of course, there are some trade-offs in living on your own. If you want to rent an apartment, there are lots of preparatory works to do. You have to keep visiting the apartments to search for your ideal one. You have to negotiate with the landlord about the price, furniture inclusion, who is responsible for the maintenance of the furniture and equipments. My experience was that after we moved into the apartment, it was not until the kitchen cupboard was soaked with water that we found out there was water leakage in the kitchen sink. Money is the main issue in living on your own. You have to be responsible for all the expenses, for example, the rent, electricity, gas, water, telephone, internet bills, etc. Therefore, you gotta be well prepared and save up for your bills. Although I find my transportation time much shorter, the saved time is spent on other things such as cooking and some other household chores. I think preparing and cooking the food do occupy a significant portion of my time. Therefore, I always try to make simple meals. On the other hand, I have to regularly tidy up my apartment and wash my clothes, so it doesn't really save much of my time after all. Now everything is settled down. I'm getting used to my new life and I'm enjoying it. I feel that moving out makes it easier for me to strike a balance between my work, my social life, my study, and my family. It may be troublesome, but it may worth.
Now, the 2020 Olympics might seem a long way away to you, but people are already talking about what new sports might be included. Today, I'm going to talk to two people who are hoping their sport might be included. The first is Johnny Mills, whose sport is wakeboarding. Johnny, can you tell us what wakeboarding is? Is it like surfboarding?
Well, a bit. It started in California because people wanted to surf but didn't have waves. It's also a bit like water skiing in that the rider is towed behind a specially built speedboat.
How fast does the boat go?
Usually at about 25 miles per hour or a bit less. The rider uses the wake the board produces in the water to launch into the air.
And then you do a lot of complicated things in the air.
That's right. Spins of up to 1,260 degrees, things like that.
1,260 degrees? That's impossible, isn't it?
Oh no, but it's pretty crazy. You spin round 3.5 times in the air.
And then you have to land again without falling over.
You'll have to come and watch some wakeboarding if you haven't seen any. Come to Wakestock in July if you can.
That's in Wales, isn't it?
Yep, Abersoch in North Wales. It's a really popular wakeboarding and music festival. It's right by the beach. It's not quite the same as California, but it's cool. It attracts a lot of great riders.
Who does wakeboarding?
They reckon about 3 million people all over the world. More guys do it, but there are increasing numbers of girls too. The people who compete are usually in their teens or 20s, but anyone can do it. There's a lot of crossover with other board sports like surfing and skateboarding. The tricks people pull are similar, and the names for things are often the same.
And looking at you, I'd say the fashion was similar too?
Yeah, the clothes and the lifestyle are similar.
Right. Now I'd like to ask Jules Russell about her sport. She's a skater in a roller derby team. Tell us about that, Jules. Is it a popular sport?
Yes, it's becoming really popular in the UK. There are about 60 leagues in England and 1,200 throughout the world. In the US and Canada, of course, and places like Scandinavia and Australia, but lots of other countries too.
The sport began in the States, didn't it?
Yes, in the 1930s, but it was more for entertainment than sport, and it died out by the 1970s. There was a revival in Texas in 2001, and from then on it's just been growing and growing.
So, how do you play it?
Well, you have 2 teams of 5 people on roller skates, of course, and they go around an oval track in the same direction. Each team has a jammer who scores points by passing members of the opposing team. They do whatever they can to stop her within reason. The team with the most points at the end of the match wins.
Oh, it sounds a bit rough.
Well, it's a contact sport, so there's bound to be a lot of pushing and falling over. It's all good fun, though. People don't often get hurt. If you try and trip someone up, you get penalised. You do try and frighten the other team a bit, though.
That's right. You have frightening clothes and special names.
People used to have incredible costumes a couple of years ago. Now the sport is changing and becoming more professional. Lots of the teams train 3 or 4 times a week and spend a lot of time in the gym. You have to be really dedicated and fit. We still have nicknames, though. I'm the Julifier.
And is the sport all female?
There are a few men who do it, but it's mostly female and amateur at the moment. Things are changing fast, though, so who knows what the future will bring. It would be fantastic to be an Olympic sport.
What do you think about the roller derby, Johnny?
It's wild. Those ladies scare me to death. Good luck to them with the Olympics thing, though, and good luck to us too.
Good luck to you both.
This recording was brought to you by the British Council. To find others like it, visit www.britishcouncil.org/Learn English Teens.
2021 to be huge for space exploration. This is BreakingNewsEnglish.com. Cosmologists, astronomers, and space engineers are predicting that 2021 will be a great year for space exploration. An increasing number of countries and commercial companies are investing in technology to venture into the heavens. Entrepreneurs like SpaceX's Elon Musk and Virgin Galactic's Richard Branson are setting their sights on space tourism and sending astronauts to Mars. What once seemed like science fiction is quickly becoming space fact. Such are the advances in technology, we might no longer be surprised at news of asteroids being mined, Mars being colonized, or of new forms of holidays, such as getaway weekend breaks to the moon. The year will start with an exciting project that will help scientists better understand the universe. NASA will launch its Q-PACE probe on January the 15th. This will study the collision of small particles in space to provide an insight into how planets originally formed. A month later, NASA's Perseverance rover will land on Mars. This mission will test for signs of possible past microbial life. NASA said, returning samples of Mars to Earth has been a goal of planetary scientists since the early days of the space age. In October, the James Webb Space Telescope, the successor to the Hubble telescope, will launch into space. Its mission is to observe the first galaxies that formed in the early universe. This is Georgiana Hall reporting from South Korea.
All you have to learn right now is, we call this sadhana, okay? In the spiritual parlance, this is called sadhana. What sadhana means is, the word sadhana literally translates as a tool. So this is about sharpening your tools, learning to use your body as a tool, learning to use your intellect and mind as a tool, learning to use your emotion and energy as a tool. Everything that you have should become your tools. That means they take instructions from you and do things for you. Right now, if you say, I'm miserable, essentially, you can give it 1,000 reasons. Simply the basic thing that's happening is your intelligence is turned against you, that's all. Hello? If you remove half your brain, you will sit peacefully. Yes or no? So the problem is intelligence. Your own intelligence has turned against you. Now you can call it misery, now you can call it depression, now you can call it all kinds of things. You can give as many exotic names as you want. Essentially, your intelligence is not your sadhana. That means it is not in your hands to use it the way you want. It is turned against you. If you sit here, you're miserable by yourself. This means what? If you're with me and miserable, you can blame it on me. Sadhguru, it's because of you I'm miserable, I am okay. But if you sit here alone and you're miserable, you're obviously in bad company, isn't it? So, this is one thing you must address. Education is not just about learning. All this learning business will be useless and meaningless in the next 5 to 10 years. Once the machine learning comes, everything that you can learn in 20 years, one little gadget will know. Your phone can do 10 PhDs a day. That's what is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. Because we have been misunderstanding memory as intelligence. Everything that you can do with your memory, a machine will be able to do better than you. So education is not just about learning, education is about learning to use yourself, learning to use your body, your mind, your emotion, everything in a certain way. It's very important that you know how to remain focused on something that doesn't mean a damn thing to you. It's very important. See, people who'll say that they lack concentration, they fall in love with the neighborhood somebody. Oh, they're fully concentrated. So it's not that they lack concentration. They say, I don't have good memory. Show them a suspense thriller movie, every scene they will remember. So their memory is pretty good. Only thing is, they have not learnt to use their mind in such a way, it doesn't matter what, they can apply themselves. If that is not there, you will not make a headway with your life. All the time, world will not be throwing the kind of ball that you want to hit. Okay, you do only what you like, you do one thing, write down things that you like and give me.
In a very simple economy with very few goods, people can barter. But when the economy grows, barter trade becomes ineffective. Let me explain this with a simple example. There was a small village by the river. At first, there were only 2 families. One of them bred rabbits, and the other grew wheat. To diversify their diet, they traded with each other. They agreed that 1 bag of wheat would be exchangeable for 1 rabbit. After some time, other families began to settle in the village. Every family produced something else. Some of them produced clothes, others fished, and still others bred cattle. Over time, there were many goods and services. A shoemaker sent his daughter Catherine to get a bag of wheat. The girl took the shoes and went to the farmer to propose a trade. The farmer agreed because he needed shoes, and so they exchanged. The next day, the shoemaker sent Catherine again to get another bag of wheat. But this time the farmer replied, "I'm sorry, I don't need a second pair of shoes, but I will give you wheat for a box of apples." So Catherine went to the gardener and proposed to exchange the shoes for some apples. The gardener replied, "I never wear shoes in the summer. I won't be needing them for at least 6 months. I can give you apples in exchange for new horseshoes for my horse, though." So the girl went to the forge, but the blacksmith said that he will give her horseshoes only for a new pair of trousers. Finally, the local seamstress agreed to exchange shoes for trousers. Unfortunately, this wasn't the end. It took Catherine half a day to find someone who needed shoes, but it took another half a day to finally get the wheat that she wanted. It's a little hard to do shopping this way, isn't it? Barter trade is ineffective and time-consuming. People need something that can be used as a medium of exchange, something everyone can accept. They needed money. Money has specific properties. It is a medium of exchange, which allows us to avoid the problems that Catherine had. It's also a unit of account, and can be used as a measure of costs and revenues through market prices. Here are some characteristics of money that allow it to be used this way. It's durable, which means it should last a long time without breaking. It's homogeneous, which means that each unit should be identical. Portable, so that it's small enough that you can carry it with you. Divisible, so that you can make change. And importantly, it should maintain its value over a long period of time, so your saving would be worth the same even after many years. Throughout human history, there have been many media of exchange, like cattle, salt, or seashells. None of these lasted very long as money. Cattle, for example, wasn't divisible, interchangeable, or easily portable. It also didn't maintain its value over a long period of time. Salt becomes stale over time, so it loses value, and it wasn't homogeneous because one bag of salt could be better quality than another. However, one thing did emerge that had these qualities: gold and precious metals, which can be minted into coins or bars. Gold can be a medium of exchange and a unit of account. We can count up the number of gold coins something costs. It's durable because it doesn't corrode, and it can last 1,000 years. It's homogeneous because all 1-ounce coins are identical and can be marked for purity. Coins are portable too, so a lot of purchasing power can fit in one's pocket. It's divisible because the coins can be different weights. And what's most important, gold has been a very stable store of value because its quantity is limited by nature. Only a small amount of gold is mined each year in comparison to the quantity already in circulation. Because of these properties of gold, it has served as money for most of human history. In modern times, however, the whole world has abandoned the gold standard.
How many of you have ever said or done something out of anger that you later regretted? Anger can either be constructive or destructive. A lot of us do unhealthy things with our anger. We get hijacked by our anger and end up erupting. Like when you stub your toe and suddenly you're cursing at the stupid coffee table. When we let anger drive the car, we can become aggressive, name-calling, blaming, or even violent. In essence, it's like you've put your 4-year-old self in the driver's seat. Dangerous. So how do we get the adult back in the driver's seat? How do we support the wise prefrontal cortex in reclaiming the steering wheel, but still allow anger to sit safely inside the car? Well, this is where mindfulness comes in. And to quote mindfulness expert Dr. Shauna Shapiro, mindfulness is paying attention with kindness and curiosity. Research has shown that mindfulness practices support the growth of the regulatory fibers from the prefrontal cortex to the lower regions of our brain, helping our wiser brain to come back online when anger is present. And the following mindfulness tools are key to growing a healthy relationship with anger. Breathe. Let's all take a deep breath right now. Taking deep breaths engages the parasympathetic nervous system and sends signals to our body that soothe the threat response, putting us back into a more relaxed state. So when you notice some tension or anger in your body, first practice slowing things down by taking deep breaths. Name it. A well-known study conducted at UCLA found that when you name your emotions, it puts the brakes on your physiological dysregulation and calms the amygdala hijack. So when you notice anger, without judgment, say, "I feel angry," or "I feel tension in my shoulders." Do it differently. When you find yourself erupting with anger, try feeling compassion. Take a deep breath and say, "I'm hurting right now. How can I be kinder to myself and those around me?" Research on compassion indicates that it can decrease cortisol levels, the stress hormone, and increase the feel-good hormone, oxytocin. When you find yourself stuffing anger, try using your whole body to safely feel it. When you creatively embody anger, it can help you begin to resolve past traumas and support you in getting to know your boundaries. And finally, inquire. Your anger has been trying to tell you something, and it's time to listen. With genuine curiosity, ask your anger, "What do I need to see right now
that I've been unwilling to face? What needs to be protected or supported? What action do I need to take right now? When more of us begin to see anger as an ally, not as a foe, we open to the many gifts this emotion offers us. When anger is our ally, we see this emotion as the flashing red warning light for the things that we or others are trespassing. Anger reveals our boundaries. When we begin to own anger in our body, we can start to thaw the parts of ourselves that have been locked and frozen in trauma. Anger heals trauma. And finally, anger urges us to come out of denial and see clearly. But we can't just stop there. Anger hangs around until we take action on what we see. Anger inspires action. With all the great challenges humans are going to continue to face, just imagine what it might look like if so many more of us were in healthy relationship with our anger, exercising our power wisely, and channeling this vital energy towards improving our lives and the world around us. So the next time you feel angry, will you pause, take a deep breath, and get to know this potent ally?
Plastic bags are good at holding groceries, but how are they at powering a house? Most of us don't think so much about trash, especially if we live in an industrialized country where we get curbside pickup. But here are some important statistics. 32% of municipal waste is recycled. Another 13% is incinerated, and that leaves the rest, which is over 50% or 1,000 pounds per year per American citizen, to sit in a landfill to decompose, or not decompose. You see, most metals and plastics can take thousands of years to break down in a landfill. And because we have future generations on the way and they're going to be generating their own waste, this is something we have to think about. Well, how does the stuff get to the landfill in the first place? There's some places that have gotten a little creative with this, like Helsinki, Finland. They're building out a system of pneumatic tubes. So what you do is you sort your waste and you put it in various bins or chutes, and then it flies through these tubes to screw tanks. There are other places like Roosevelt Island, New York, that are doing the same thing, but the one in Finland has some special features. For example, those tanks have sensors on them, so they can alert you to when those tanks are full and a crew can come out and empty it out. They also can track where the trash comes from. That's important. It means that they know who is generating the most garbage, like a manufacturing plant, and those people get charged more for collection services. But that still leaves us with the problem of what to do with all these landfills.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
No, we're not going to shoot it out into space. That doesn't make economic sense. The environmental impact would be terrible. I mean, you might as well pay people $1 million to pour a gallon of oil in the nearest river. But an idea that is getting some traction is plasma gasification. In this process, extremely high voltage electrical current is passed between two electrodes, generating a temperature near 25,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than the surface of the sun. Because this process takes place in a no-oxygen environment, there's no actual burning going on here. Instead, that energy is breaking down the molecular bonds of the trash itself, freeing the component atoms. They become either a synthetic gas or molten slag. And here's the really awesome part. That synthetic gas can actually be turned into fuel that will run the plasma waste converter itself. And if you generate enough synthetic gas, you can actually generate enough electricity to feed back into the power grid. And what about the landfill that's not in a landfill? There are islands of plastic floating in the ocean, like one in the Pacific that's about the size of Texas. What do we do about those?
I'm the the Wolfman. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm here today with a childhood idol of mine, Julia Butterfly Hill. And you spent like a lot of time in a tree in your bare feet to preserve it and protect it. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I was 23 years old, and I found out that over 97% of the ancient redwoods are already gone, and that we're still logging them. And the way that we're logging them is highly destructive, causing mudslides. It destroys habitat for endangered species, as well as destroying people's homes. That we follow up the clear cutting with lighting them on fire with diesel fuel or with napalm, turning a beautiful ancient forest into a toxic wasteland. And when I heard that information, I just felt deep in my heart that I had to do something, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I'd never done activism before, but I knew I wanted to do something. And then I heard that there was this action called tree sitting, where you could sit in a tree and try and bring attention to what was happening and also try and protect the tree that you're in. And I grew up with two brothers and no sisters, very poor, traveling around the country, so I spent a lot of time in nature and playing in trees. So when I heard I could live in a tree to help, I was like, I know how to do that, sign me up. And that's how I got involved.
Wow, so you're here in Toronto, Ontario, and you're here to do a talk this evening just about that. So what can we expect to hear in your talk?
Well, I never write speeches. I really speak from my heart and whatever comes alive in the moment. I definitely am passionate about reminding us that we are of this earth and we are from this earth, and we need to begin exploring what that looks like, what that feels like, how to restore and heal that torn connection of this relationship, and then how we then take that relationship into our lives, whether it's a workplace or our families or our communities. How do we take that healing and restoration with this earth and then bring that into our world and into our communities, that hopefully that we can turn the tide of one that's been very harmful and very destructive to one that's more loving and caring and compassionate.
Wow, that's a beautiful, beautiful message. So now, when you look around on the internet, I see people do things like they name children after the tree that you were in. How does that make you feel that you went from a simple act of activism and now dedicating your life to it to see that legacy?
Well, some of it's a little weird, just because I'm an introvert, and people don't know that because they know me as a public person, but I'm like, I lived in a tree by myself for 2 years. An extrovert might have lasted 2 months, maybe. Part of the reason I was able to last 2 years is because my nature is an introvert. So part of it is a little strange for me, having all that attention, because the introverts in me is like, nope, not me. But what I love about it is that I think that our human family is hungry for stories that really share our authentic selves instead of the surface. What do you wear? What kind of car do you drive? Where do you live? But so much of our society, and industrialized society, is based on what's on the surface, and our souls long for depth. Our souls long for roots. And I think that what's really igniting in people is seeing a mirror of themselves, of what they care about, what's important to them. And in that space, I'm deeply honored that I've gotten to be a part of that.
Wow. So if people want to learn more about you, where can they go? Do you have a website?
www.juliabutterfly.com.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to put that right there. You can go on the website. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Wolfman with Julia Butterfly Hill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Anita. I'm Daman. Good morning. How are you doing? I'm doing fine, thank you. How was the traffic coming over here? The traffic was light this morning, no traffic jam. That is good. Anita, let's start the interview. Are you ready? Yes, I am. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm the Finance Department Manager. As you know, there is an open position in my department, and I need to fill this position as soon as possible. Please tell me a little bit about the position. It is an entry-level position. The new employee will have to work closely with the accounting department. He will also have to deal with the bank on daily basis. What type of qualifications do you require? I require a college degree in finance. Some working experience would be helpful. What kind of experience are you looking for? Doing office work is good. However, since this is an entry-level position, I do not require a lot of experience. I am willing to train the new person. That is great. Anita, tell me a little bit about yourself. I was a student at Bangalore University and I just graduated with a bachelor degree in finance. I have been working part-time as a payroll clerk for the last 2 years. What are you looking for in a job? The job should help me see what finance is all about. I have learned a lot of finance theories at school, and now it is the time for me to put them into practice. Anything else? I also hope that it will help me grow in my field. What are your strengths? Why should I hire you? I am a hardworking person and a fast learner. I am very eager to learn and I get along fine with people. Okay, now let me ask you a few quick questions. You don't mind working long hours, do you? No, I do not. Can you handle pressure? Yes, I can. When I was going to school, I took quite a few courses each semester while working at least 20 hours every week. And I handled that situation very well. Do you still have any questions for me? No, I think I have a pretty good understanding of the job. I believe that I can handle it with ease and I hope to have the opportunity to work for you. Anita, nice meeting you. Thank you for coming. Nice meeting you too.
From a technique perspective, walking and running differ in terms of the foot strike. While walking, the heel strikes the ground first, and while running, it's more of a front foot or mid-foot strike. Also, while walking, one foot is always in contact with the ground while the other foot is in the air. And while running, both feet should be in the air at some point during your stride. So if you ever witness race walking, which is basically a race where people walk at a fast pace, maintaining this walking technique where one foot is always touching the ground is mandatory. Otherwise, the participant is disqualified. Both walking and running essentially use the same muscle groups in your legs, which includes the quads, muscles in the front of your thighs, the hamstrings, muscles in the back of your thighs, glutes, which is basically your buttocks, and your calves. The arms, shoulders, and the core muscles are also involved in the process. But the difference is in the intensity of the workout. Running is a high impact, high intensity workout, whereas walking is a low intensity, low impact workout. Now, as per research, running burns 30% more calories as compared to walking for the same distance, which basically means if you're running 5 kilometers at a moderate pace and walking the same distance, you will burn more calories while running. This is because running is an intense form of workout, so higher speed means higher calorie burn. Also, running at a moderately fast pace leads to something called as the afterburn effect, which means that even after you finish your run, you'll be burning calories. But if you prefer walking and you're planning to lose weight or burn calories, you just have to change your nutrition plan in accordance with walking. Now, what does science have to say about walking versus running? According to one study, 5 minutes of running is as beneficial as 15 minutes of walking. which means that you will experience health benefits faster if you run. Studies also suggest that runners or joggers live longer as compared to non-runners or people who don't do any physical activity. Men live 3.8 years longer and women live 4.7 years longer. Also, if you run for just 2 hours per week for 1 year, you will lose weight, reduce the body fat, reduce your resting heart rate, and also reduce the fat in the blood, which is basically your triglycerides. There's even evidence that running contributes to the overall emotional well-being of a person as it brings down the tension, depression, and anger. Walking can offer similar benefits, but it will take much longer to achieve them. Also, walking has an advantage over running when it comes to the risk of injury. According to a study, running produces ground reaction forces 2.5 times the body weight, and while walking, the ground reaction force is 1.5 times the body weight. Ground reaction force is a force exerted by the ground on the body in response to the force exerted by the body on the ground, much like Newton's third law of action and reaction. So greater the ground reaction force, greater the wear and tear, which eventually leads to injuries. Another catch with running which was identified by a study was that if you overexert or run too much at a higher pace without taking appropriate rest, it may make your heart weak and lead to heart problems. Just like everything else, too much of running may prove to be harmful. Science is still divided when it comes to the overall benefits of running versus walking. But based on the studies and the research done so far, running will bring in benefits faster as compared to walking. But overexertion may lead to more damage than good. Also, using proper running gear will reduce the risk of injuries. So choose what you love and keep moving.
So, Sam, have you finished that book we had to read for school, Lyme County?
Oh, hi, Lisa. Yeah, just last weekend. It took me a long time to get into it. The first chapter was difficult, but in the end, I couldn't put it down.
I liked it from the first page. I've never finished a book so quickly, and normally I don't like reading fiction.
The main character in the story, Paul, was interesting. He hurt his leg badly and couldn't play football with the other kids. But the author didn't make you feel pity for him.
Yes, that was because he was such a strong character. He couldn't do anything active, but he used his time to think about game plans for his team. They depended on him in the end.
He was almost like a coach.
I thought the book was well written, and it had a good plot. There was a bit of mystery about Paul's brother. Did he cause Paul's injury? Was he jealous of Paul? You don't find out until the very end.
I didn't care so much about that. It was the football matches I liked, seen through Paul's eyes. I could imagine exactly what was happening.
The author was clever because when Paul was unhappy, the whole story, the weather, the background, sort of got darker, so the reader could feel what Paul was feeling.
There was quite a lot of detail about the techniques of football. I think the author got that just right.
Any more would make it too long and boring for people who weren't mad about football. That side of the book was about right. For me, the best part was that Paul realised what's important in life and how to deal with tough situations. He really grew as a person.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. but they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world, and no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight, I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you, good night, and God bless America.
We are honored to be talking with Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa, whose unshakable courage, his faith and integrity have inspired millions to see what is possible in their own lives. I've had the pleasure, the honor of meeting Mr. Mandela on a couple of occasions before, and I will tell you, to be in his presence is really, to be in your presence is like being in the presence of royalty and grace at the same time. I wonder, how does a man spend 27 years in prison, put there by an oppressor, and come out of that experience with not a heart of stone, not a cold heart, but a heart that is willing to forgive and embrace? I remember talking to you one night over dinner, and you had said to me that our hatred for the oppressor was so intense, we did not see the value of talking to him. So at what point did you see the value of letting go of the hatred and begin the process of talking?
Well, let me say first, that is a great tragedy to spend the best of your lives in prison. But although it looks ironical, there are advantages in that. If I had not been to prison, I would not have been able to achieve the most difficult a task in life, and that is changing yourself. I would not have that opportunity. I had that opportunity because in prison, you have what we don't have in our work outside prison. The opportunity to sit down and think, which is an important part.
I'd love to go abroad on holiday next spring. What do you think?
I'm not sure. When were you thinking? In April?
Maybe. We have 2 days off work for our national holiday. We could take off another 3 days and go for a week. We could even go for 2.
No, not 2. If I take all my holiday in April, I won't be able to take a holiday in the summer.
OK, 1 then.
Where would you like to go?
Well, I looked at flights. There aren't any flights to Greece until May, unfortunately. I'd like to go there, but we can fly to Spain quite cheaply.
That would be nice. Where would we stay? In a hotel?
I'm not sure. I don't really like staying in hotels, but we could hire a cottage.
I don't mind either. Is a cottage cheaper than a hotel?
It's about the same, but I prefer staying in cottages. It's more peaceful, and we can cook for ourselves.
OK. Well, that's fine by me.
The problem is transport. You can get to the hotels easily from the airport. They're all in the town centre and the buses go there all the time. But the cottages are further away. We'd need to hire a car.
That's fine. I don't mind doing that. Why don't you pick out a few cottages and we'll choose one?
I've done that already. I'll show you on the computer. There's this one. It's actually an apartment. It's inside an old palace in this beautiful historic village in the mountains. Isn't it beautiful?
It's quite expensive, though. And it has 3 bedrooms. We don't need that many.
I suppose not. OK, what about this one? It's up in the hills. Very quiet and peaceful. It has a lovely view. Look, and it's not too expensive.
That looks nice.
In the 1600s, the Dutch East India Company employed hundreds of ships to trade gold, porcelain, spices, and silks around the globe. But running this massive operation wasn't cheap. In order to fund their expensive voyages, the company turned to private citizens, individuals who could invest money to support the trip in exchange for a share of the ship's profits. This practice allowed the company to afford even grander voyages, increasing profits for both themselves and their savvy investors. Selling these shares in coffee houses and shipping ports across the continent, the Dutch East India Company unknowingly invented the world's first stock market. Since then, companies have been collecting funds from willing investors to support all kinds of businesses. And today, the stock market has schools, careers, and even whole television channels dedicated to understanding it. But the modern stock market is significantly more complicated than its original incarnation. So how do companies and investors use the market today? Let's imagine a new coffee company that decides to launch on the market. First, the company will advertise itself to big investors. If they think the company is a good idea, they get the first crack at investing and then sponsor the company's initial public offering, or IPO. This launches the company onto the official public market, where any company or individual who believes the business could be profitable might buy a stock. Buying stocks makes those investors partial owners in the business. Their investment helps the company to grow, and as it becomes more successful, more buyers may see potential and start buying stocks. As demand for those stocks increases, so does their price, increasing the cost for prospective buyers and raising the value of the company's stocks people already own. For the company, this increased interest helps fund new initiatives and also boosts its overall market value by showing how many people are willing to invest in their idea. However, if for some reason a company starts to seem less profitable, the reverse can also happen. If investors think their stock value is going to decline, they'll sell their stocks with the hopes of making a profit before the company loses more value. As stocks are sold and demand for the stock goes down, the stock price falls, and with it, the company's market value. This can leave investors with big losses, unless the company starts to look profitable again. This seesaw of supply and demand is influenced by many factors. Companies are under the unavoidable influence of market forces, such as the fluctuating price of materials, changes in production technology, and the shifting costs of labor. Investors may be worried about changes in leadership, bad publicity, or larger factors like new laws and trade policies. And of course, plenty of investors are simply ready to sell valuable stocks and pursue personal interests. All these variables cause day-to-day noise in the market, which can make companies appear more or less successful. And in the stock market, appearing to lose value often leads to losing investors, and in turn, losing actual value. Human confidence in the market has the power to trigger everything from economic booms to financial crises. And this difficult-to-track variable is why most professionals promote reliable long-term investing over trying to make quick cash. However, experts are constantly building tools in efforts to increase their chances of success in this highly unpredictable system. But the stock market is not just for the rich and powerful. With the dawn of the internet, everyday investors can buy stocks in many of the exact same ways a large investor would. And as more people educate themselves about this complex system, they too can trade stocks, support the businesses they believe in, and pursue their financial goals. The first step is getting invested. Interested in pursuing your own financial goals? Download a free audio version of The Richest Man in Babylon on audible.com/TED-Ed. You'll not only get timeless advice on making and investing money, but also an imaginative take on life in ancient Mesopotamia.
Bodgy, you'll have tea, coffee. Icky cheetah. Oh, that looks nice. It's dokra, but made small. Dokri. I'm starting my journey close to home by visiting my mum and my aunties in West London. They were young girls in 1947 and rarely talk about how they survived partition. As Sikhs, they found themselves living in the new state of Pakistan, which was created as a homeland for India's Muslims. They were forced to flee to India when partition was announced. What do you remember in 1947? What happened?
One day, Sikh military comes with green lorry, and they says, come on, everybody have to move from here. If you stay here, they will kill you. They put us in the lorry and take to the station.
So there was your mother,
yeah.
There was you two, and another little sister, baby sister.
We stay in the train 3 nights. No food, nothing. My sister was a very bad. She's very bad. My sister died over there.
My family had lived in Jhelum and Rawalpindi for generations. When India was divided in two, they ended up on the wrong side of the border and were no longer welcome. That's why, along with millions of others, they were forced to flee. I always thought that before these troubles and before partition, everybody used to get on. What was it like before partition with Hindus and Muslims and Sikhs?
They were friends, but just like brothers and sisters and everything.
So how did that feel, living there when you were all together?
Very nice, very just, never thought that something will happen like this. We never thought. And from their side, up to now, I haven't been in Rawalpindi. And I miss that place very badly. Oh, very sad. It's very sad. The partition thing was very sad. It is written in the history that the people write with the golden and silver words, but this history is written with the blood.
It's clear that the events of 1947 in India have affected my family till today. And I think it's fair to say that all of us who have been affected by partition still live under that shadow. I'd like to find out what happened to the world that my mum talked about, where everybody lived side by side as brother and sister. I'd like to find out where the seeds of partition started.
He's known as the King of Pop, but his reign on the throne hasn't always been easy. Michael Jackson was born in Gary, Indiana in 1958, the fifth son of steelworker Joe Jackson. His childhood was difficult, as Joe assembled his boys into a group and worked them incredibly hard, while his mother's Jehovah's Witness faith kept the family isolated from outside influence. The Jackson 5 were an instant phenomenon, becoming the first group in history to have their first 4 singles hit #1.
I mean, when the Jackson 5 came along, everybody loved it. I mean, it was, you know, I think particularly black audiences responded to him like he was their kid brother. But, you know, white audiences heard these great songs and, you know, they saw this kid on a stage. It was fantastic.
While working on the film The Wiz, Michael met producer Quincy Jones, who would help produce his first solo album, Off the Wall, which would eventually sell 7 million copies. Jackson's next project became the biggest selling album of all time. Propelled by pristinely produced pop hits like Billie Jean and groundbreaking music videos, Thriller helped Jackson, sporting his signature sequin glove, moonwalk his way to becoming the biggest star of the 80s.
Well, on stage, Michael Jackson was just an explosive performer. You know, stuff, again, that he learned from Jackie Wilson and James Brown. He took that and did his own version of it.
Thriller changed the industry, spending 2+ years on the charts, spawning an unheard of 7 top 10 singles.
He kind of like created the modern day music video. I mean, with Thriller, I mean, that was like a movie.
As his fame grew, so did the focus on Jackson's eccentric personal life. Stories of plastic surgeries, his friendship with a chimp named Bubbles, and his attempts to buy the Elephant Man's skeleton earned the star the unwanted moniker Wacko Jacko in the press. Thriller had raised the bar to such unrealistic levels that despite containing 5 #1 singles, disappointment surrounded his next album, Bad. His 1991 album, Dangerous, debuted at #1, but didn't stay there long. In a musical landscape dominated by grunge, the King of Pop began to seem less and less relevant. Jackson often likened himself to a real-life version of Peter Pan, even naming his California estate Neverland. The star always enjoyed spending time with children, but in 1993, a 13-year-old boy accused the star of molesting him. Though no proof ever surfaced, Jackson settled with the boy for $20 million. In an odd attempt to restore his image, he shocked the public in 1994 by marrying Lisa Marie Presley. Proof that the marriage was a publicity stunt was supplied 9 months later when they divorced. In 1996, he married Debbie Rowe. The two would divorce, but not before she gave birth to 2 children. In 2001, Invincible was a disappointment, making it clear he was now more of a tabloid curiosity than a legitimate musical force.
You think about the controversies, you think about the scandals, you think about the accusations, you think about the weird, eccentric behavior. You know, by the time you get down to, oh right, and he's one of the greatest singers of all time, that's way down on the list. That's a very difficult thing to come back off of.
Just when the public thought they had seen it all, Michael's behavior as a father, which included hanging his son over a balcony in Germany, made Jackson seem more peculiar than ever. Michael Jackson reached heights of fame few people in pop culture history have ever known. Sadly, his incredible talent might not be enough to overshadow the puzzling life he has led offstage.
Across the world, policymakers are responsible for managing immigration and deciding how many of which types of people should be let into their countries. They typically frame these important decisions around 3 major goals. Immigration policy should respond to national economic needs, align with national security priorities, and reflect national values. Examples from American history illustrate how each of these goals influences anti- or pro-immigration policy. Opponents of immigration claim that it displaces native workers and undercuts their wages. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 reflects this perspective, Following waves of Chinese immigration during the gold rush, the fear of cheap Chinese labor, along with widespread racist views, led to the first major law restricting immigration to the U.S. Conversely, pro-immigration voices argue that immigrant workers can fill critical gaps in the labor market and stimulate economic growth. This was the goal of the Bracero program of 1942. It awarded farm work contracts to more than 4.5 million Mexican immigrants as the United States prepared for an anticipated World War II labor shortage. And more recently, the H-1B visa program was created in 1990 to allow in more skilled foreign workers to support new high-technology sectors. The anti-immigration position often views migrants as national threats, possibly seeking to commit espionage or terrorism. While anti-Semitism played a major role, this argument was cited when the U.S. turned away the MS St. Louis, a ship carrying 937 mostly Jewish passengers fleeing Nazi persecution in 1939. Immigration opponents characterized the passengers as potential German spies or as communist agitators. Meanwhile, some policymakers support immigration, arguing that it can be an effective way to gain valuable intelligence from and undermine rival countries. This was the intent of the Cuban Adjustment Act of 1966, a Cold War policy which fast-tracked Cubans to permanent residency, seeking to subvert the rise of communism and Fidel Castro. Some anti-immigration voices assert that immigrants should reflect the racial and religious preferences of the recipient country, as typically defined by an in-power majority. The Johnson-Reed Act of 1924 expressed this view, supported by nativist groups like the Immigration Restriction League and the Ku Klux Klan. The policy established stricter nation-based quotas, limiting immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe and favoring white Protestants from Western and Northern Europe. On the other side, advocates believe immigration reflects the values of humanitarianism and egalitarianism, that all humans are worth helping and deserve equal rights. Thus, they argue immigration policy should not be discriminatory. This belief led to the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. Influenced by the civil rights movement, this policy ended nation-based quotas and set up new visa categories for immigrants with special skills or family connections. To understand immigration policy, it's helpful to consider these goals of national economics, security, and values, which policymakers use to justify decisions that can affect millions of people in search of a better life.
The recognition that there is the problem is the beginning of a solution. Another issue which was also very sensitive, and I give credit to Goh Chok Tong for having the gumption to tackle it, to reverse our population policy. Yes, people grumble, why are we changing policy? Because circumstances have changed, and a continuation of the policy will be criminal neglect. We need a government which is both bold and prudent. And I am dead serious when I said on the eve of National Day, get our ablest and our best into politics. One key requirement is let's avoid hypocrisy and let's do this thing honestly, approximate the market rate. Try and get the government on the cheap, you end up with a cheap government and you'll be sorry for yourselves. What does the government have to do to keep up the enthusiasm? Because somebody else has started something new and you've got to chase him. I think that sums up Singapore's position. That's the art of government. First job of a government is to equalize opportunities, right? Not equalize results. You equalize results, you're done for. You end up with what Deng Xiaoping calls the iron rice bowl. Nobody works, everybody does his minimum, very little rice in the bowl. Those who are faint-hearted, well, there's the exit for you. It will always be an open country. You can move in, you can move out. There is no other way in which we can live. What made the difference in Singapore was that a group of men in 1963, 64, 65, when we were in Malaysia, we decided that we are going to live only one life. If we have to die, we will die for a cause. That made Singapore possible. We couldn't be placated and settle for less. To settle personally for a way out for yourself was easy. I believe we've got a group of men similarly determined. I'm not sure whether in a crisis they got the same tempered steel, but I think quite a few will measure up. The question is to get more. If you believe you're going to get good government, whatever you do, then you're going to risk it all away. You vote in jokers, cranks, weak men, charlatans, with some gift of the gab, you run a very serious risk of losing everything you have. So the final message I give to Singaporeans is, your future really depends on what you make of it. The government can give you that framework, can give expression to the will of a people, but the people must have that will. If you don't have it, there's nothing a government can do.